subbing is like a 2.5-hour heart attack.
Yes. Thank you, George Farmer. That's exactly what he told me, bro.
That's what he came up with that phrase.
He came up with that, and the way he did it was just so cold, because I think it was my first night getting ready to sub on Broadway, and we're in the dressing room, and he's like, "Look, just relax. But it's, basically going to be like a 2-hour heart attack." He told me, relax, but it's going to be like a 2-hour heart attack. I was like, thanks, George. With a straight face. Like, he didn't laugh, nothing, just walked away.
Thank you for listening to the Broadway Drumming 101 podcast with your host, Clayton Craddock. If you like what you hear on the show and you want to know more, subscribe to Broadway Drumming 101 at broadwaydrumming101.com.
Welcome to Broadway Drumming 101. My name is Clayton Craddock, and my guest today is one of the flyest, coolest members of the drumming community with the coolest hats ever, Eric Brown. Thank you for coming in. I see him every time I see him on Instagram. Every time I see him in person, he has a different hat on. I'm sure if you pan around in your spot right now, you'll probably see a wall of hats and another shelves of hats. And do you have more hats than snare drums?
I do, actually.
Thank you for being a part of this, man. I'm glad to talk to you, and I'm glad to finally see you again. The last time I think we saw each other was another kind of Zoom meeting with other talented drummers, and it was a very fun, lively conversation. But I'd like to just get to know more about you and your experience playing shows, and how you got into the whole theater business, quote unquote, or industry. Are you a native New Yorker?
I am not. I'm born and raised in California, in the Bay Area specifically. I was born in Oakland, California, raised in Richmond, California, a little small town next to Berkeley. I moved here in like 2002, and been here ever since. So,
did you have a musical family?
Yeah, I did. Both parents sing. And my mom played a little bit of keys. My siblings, my two older brothers both play. One plays drums and he sings. The other plays bass. My sister is the music critic. She doesn't play anything.
Was she just sitting back with her arms folded like, no, y'all not hit?
Sometimes. As long as she was dancing around and bobbing her head, it was all good.
Are you the oldest, youngest, in the middle?
I'm the youngest of 4.
Wow. Are they all still in the Bay Area, or are everybody spread across the United States?
No, everyone's in California, man. I'm the only one that's all the way on the East Coast.
So did you play in bands in high school, junior high? Like, what was the thing that said, I want to play drums?
Honestly, it was hearing my older brothers. They had bands that rehearsed in our garage. My parents were cool enough to let them, have bands and practice in our home. So there were always musicians coming through and bands practicing literally in our garage. And there was this one moment back in the 70s, my brothers had a residency in Japan with a band that they had established in the Bay Area. And I remember when they came back, it was like a 3-month residency back then. And they came back and they rehearsed. Man, they sounded so good. It just blew my mind, because I remember how they sounded before they left. They were good. But when they came back from that residency, they were just like on another level. And even as a kid, when I heard them at that time, I was like this is what I want to do.
Did you get a chance to sit in and play in that band at all?
Yeah, all the time. And I would get in trouble because, they would leave their instruments there. So I would always sneak in the garage and play when they would leave. But they would let me, sit in and play and jam with them, at the rehearsals and afterwards. So that was always cool.
What kind of music was it?
It was R&B. They did covers. They also had some originals, but mostly covers. All the, the Shaka Khan and Brothers Johnsons and all of that. I mean, it was a really killing unit. It was like bass, drums, keys, 2 saxophone players. I say guitar, right? And another female vocalist. One of the members actually worked with Prince. Her name was Bonnie Boyer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's from Oakland. Rest in peace. Yeah, but she was like another Shaka, but she played keys. I think she worked in Prince's. I think it was a Sign of the Times.
Did she also sing? Did she sing on Diamonds and Pearls? Is that her?
No, Rosie Gaines. She was from the Bay Area also.
Ah,
but Bonnie was right before her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Were there any drummers that you listened to on the radio or saw in concert and you were like, you know what, I want to play like that person?
Yeah, there were several. I mean, there were just some local cats in the Bay Area, like right in my neighborhood, that were killing. My brother was one, Tom Brown. This guy named Dezon Claiborne who lived around the corner. He was lefty. And I would go and just sit, and literally he would just let me sit there and, watch him practice. He was another amazing cat, still plays today. There was another guy named Kerry who used to play in my brother's band. He was amazing. So, I mean, I came up around a lot of drummers. Sheila E. was very accessible. You could see her like in the local parks, back in the day, playing with her dad's group or whoever came through. Mosswood Park in Oakland, California. You could see Larry Graham back in the day. Yeah, it was crazy. So I'm dating myself a little bit. Yes, I'm an OG. I'm bringing up a lot of names. People are like, wait, Larry Graham? The Larry Graham? Graham Central Station? Yes, that one.
Did you start your own band?
I did. I had a few. My first band as a kid was called the Box Top Band, which was thanks to my sister for that name, because we literally didn't have drums. We played on boxes. It was me and a couple of my best friends.
Wow.
We put on records and played to the records on boxes.
Did you play any gigs in that group?
Man, in the neighborhood.
Here come the Box Tops. Oh, snap.
And in backyards, man, we would put on records and entertain parents and whatnot. Oh, they were so cute. Yeah. Yeah, man. As a teenager, I was heavily involved in church, and but I still loved all types of music. I was listening to a lot of contemporary jazz at the time, like Yellow Jackets, Weather Report, and that sort of thing. So I wanted to do this gospel jazz group. So I hooked up with a few of my favorite musicians, peers, and we created this gospel jazz group. And we were actually doing gigs, playing at a lot of different churches, and basically creating our own music based on that Yellow Jackets, Weather Report-ish kind of vibe. And it was cool for a little while. And we all just eventually, went our own separate ways and started, doing our own gigs. But that was really cool. I'm really, close with a lot of those musicians. I had Raymond McKinley, who still works with Sheila E. now, bass player. Sandra Manning. Sandra is an amazing organist. She's still in the Bay Area, worked with Lettucey. Who else? Ricky Alexander was a sax player. He works with Tony now. did we have a guitarist? No, there was no guitarist. And yeah, and I played and did some singing back then. I wasn't singing as much as I am now with my band, but yeah, we were doing some things.
Did you record a CD or a cassette back then?
We did like a demo cassette or something back in the day, but that was the extent of it. It never went beyond that.
During high school, I guess, did you have an idea of what you wanted to do professionally? Did you say, you know what, I want to go to music school, or I want to stay here, I want to go to LA, I want to go to New York, Nashville?
Yeah, man, I was all over the place in high school as far as what I wanted to do musically. I knew I wanted to be in music. I knew I wanted to, work professionally as a drummer. But for some reason, LA didn't appeal to me, man. I knew that's where a lot of things was happening, and a lot of cats were going there getting work. And I went there and hung for a little while, back in the day after I got out of high school. Because like I said, a lot of my friends were going there and they were getting work. For some reason, man, the vibe and the scene at that time did not resonate with me, a good friend of mine, Eric Smith, killing bass player now. He's gone on, done very well for himself, worked with Rihanna. He's Layla's MD now. Back in the day, I think his first tour was with Sheila. So I would hang out with him. We were really tight. So I would go to a lot of his rehearsals before he'd go on tour or whatever. And it was cool, but again, for some reason, it just didn't, resonate with me. I wanted to do, I just wanted to explore a little more, so eventually what I ended up falling into was this really great gig with Michael Frontane's Spearhead. And I worked with Spearhead for, I don't know, maybe 5 years, something like that, touring. And that kept me in the Bay Area for a while. I was able to work with Edwin Hawkins, Wayman Tisdale. I played on his album, actually, the one Watch Me Play. Lettucey's first album, which is really hard to find, I just noticed. But her first album, I was on that one. Played on the hit song that, by the way, what tune was that? Take Time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, yeah, there were some good things happening in high school. Like, back to your question, I was all over the place. I played in the marching band. There was a gospel choir. At the time, there were a couple of jazz bands at my high school. Shout out to El Cerrito High. But what I enjoyed most really was the marching band. As little as I am carrying this big drum, and what we would do was we would mimic Cal Berkeley's marching band, like everything. We would go to their rehearsals, and we would watch them on the field, and we literally copied most of their routine. That was El Cerrito marching band's whole thing. So that was a blast, and it helped build up a lot of stamina.
So you're with Spearhead. You're playing on a bunch of different albums, and you're doing some touring. Did you decide to move to New York and say, let me just try this New York thing? Like, what made you come to New York?
The opportunity came up, man, for me to move. I was married at the time. And, when the opportunity came up, we took it. And, eventually, that marriage didn't work out. So I stayed in New York and continued, to hustle and do my thing out here, and got married again and haven't looked back, man.
When somebody comes to New York like yourself and, I'm here now for whatever reason, they come with somebody or they just decide to move here, what would you recommend them doing in order to meet musicians?
You have to get out, go to the local clubs, the jazz clubs, go to the jam sessions. And you got to meet people and network, just like with any industry, you need to network and know people. It's what you know and who you know.
So when you say hustle and network, what does that actually mean? It's like get out there and hustle. You can just keep running and run from club to club, but in networking, okay, I need a network of people. What does that actually mean in practice?
Good question. It means a lot of things, and it depends on the direction that you want to go as a musician. I mean, I think, if cats just have a clear idea of what they want to do, that's, you're already, winning. In my opinion, have a clear idea, or at least as close to a real clear idea of what it is that you want to do, what you want to accomplish. If you're trying to, be in the straight ahead world, if you're trying to, play jazz, then you need to go to Smalls. You need to go to those jam sessions. I would say you need to find out about the new school, the different schools in the area. Get to know a lot of those students that have gone there. It means a lot of things. It just depends on what direction you're trying to go into as a musician.
So you wound up meeting a bunch of different people, and I met you through George Farmer, who happened to be the bass player with a singer, songwriter, performer named Omar. And you were playing with Omar at the time. And I forgot what club it was. I don't know if it was the Bowery Ballroom or it was maybe it was a place on Houston Street. I definitely remember that. So how long into your New York City career were you connected with Omar? And how did you get connected with him?
That gig, I think, happened like within the first 5 years of moving to New York. That was, my connect with that was through a bass player friend of mine who we also released a project together, Mike Griot, and a keyboard player named Raleigh Neal. I think they were the ones that received the call to put together a U.S. band for Omar from the UK. And we were, doing some local gigs together. Mike Griot and Raleigh, myself, we were doing some local gigs. So when it came up, they, of course, reached out to me.
And did you wind up doing a U.S. tour with him, or was it just basically some spot dates here and there?
We did a lot of spot dates. I never did like an extensive tour with Omar. But yeah, we did a lot of U.S. Spot dates.
So when you're in New York City, 5 years in, you're playing with Omar, you're playing with a bunch of different people. Was there something that said, you know what, let me check out this whole theater thing? Or was that not even on your radar?
No, that's the amazing thing about it. Theater was not, Broadway wasn't on my radar, because I'm not a strong reader. So, my impression was that you had to be a killing reader, sight reader, and, and be able to play it like you've been living it. So, of course, I looked at it, but to me, that was like a world that's in a whole nother world in the distance. And, George Farmer, I believe he was working on a show. Oh my gosh, I can't remember the name of
Spring Awakening.
Spring Awakening, and he invited me to one of the rehearsals. I think we were rehearsing with a musician friend of mine, Nick Roth. We were doing like a trio thing, and he had like all this music. And I noticed, it was Spring Awakening, and he was telling me about the show. And he said, "Hey, are you still interested in, in doing this?" When he first got the gig, I told him that, I was like, man, if I could ever just come and, check it out, I'd like to. so, he eventually invited me to one of the rehearsals, and man, I loved it. And from there, I was like, I can do this.
Did you wind up?
Some work. But I think I can do this.
Did you wind up subbing for the drummer there?
I never subbed there, but I thought the show was dope. I really loved the music. Yeah, and then fast forward to Memphis, the same thing happened. George reached out to me again and was like, "Yo, we're doing the show, Memphis, and they need some subs." I was like, "Yeah, man, give them my name," and then here you are. I'll never forget that whole experience, even just the way it happened and how I prepared for it was just like, what a ride.
Preparing for Memphis the Musical and subbing for that show, what was the process that you went through?
Well, first of all, man, thank you. And to George for bringing me in. What I did, and I appreciate these words. You gave me many words back then, but one of the main things I remember you telling me was, you were like, "Look, play this gig like you're trying to take it from me."
Wow, I said that? That's interesting.
And I was like, really?
Oh, yeah? Watch this.
Like, okay.
I probably would have said something like that. Wow, that's interesting.
But I get it. After getting in there and understanding the vibe and how things work and what Kenny Seymour, the director, wanted, and what the world of Broadway wants when it comes to subs, they basically want to feel like there isn't a sub playing that night. They want it to sound like it always does. It doesn't matter if you're, like more funky or less funky. It needs to be the same, period. As close to the same as you can get there. But my process, man, honestly, I had the audio from you and I had the music. I would religiously listen to that music and I memorized the entire show while going through the book, of course. And, but that was my process. It was very, not something I would recommend most people do, but my way of learning, and I was so eager to get in there and do a great job. I literally shut down for like a month as far as listening to any other music. I literally would wake up, I would listen down to the entire show. It was like a routine for me. It was breakfast, lunch, and dinner. At least 3 times a day, I would listen to the entire show. Throughout the day, like I made a playlist and everything, I would go to the toughest song, which was like a big dance routine song. I had all these hits, and that was, I would listen. That's what I did. I listened to it religiously. I was able to, go and practice and share the tune, because you need to know that with Broadway, you don't get to necessarily come in and play with the entire orchestra and work through the entire show. When you come in to play it, that's it. They hire you for a date and you come in and you play it, and either you come back or you won't.
And you came back over and over again throughout the entire run of the show. And I appreciate all of that hard work that you did. Now, it's funny now that you said that, as far as playing, what was the quote again? Play this gig as if you're trying to take it from me.
Yes.
Yeah. And I probably got that from a friend of mine who talks about his son, who's now a drummer at a college near me. And he's basically saying, You got to get out there. When you get done with school, you got to get out there and go to New York City or wherever you're going to go. You got to compete with Clayton. You got to compete with Eric Brown. You got to compete with all these people. And, he basically says these words like, you got to get out there and basically kind of take their gig. Now, the thing is, you don't want to get out and have this attitude, I'm going to take somebody's gig. But the reason why I said that is because I wanted you to play it as good or better than me so that I wouldn't have any issue leaving and saying, oh, my God, I hope he's going to do all right. I want you to play it better than me. And if they like you better than me, that's good. I'm not, I realized after several years of being in New York City, I'm good at what I do. And I know how good I can play, and I'm confident in what I can give to somebody. So if somebody comes and tries to take my gig, well, if you get it, then you get it. I'm going to go someplace else. There's other people that are going to hire me, or I'll find other opportunities. But it's not about trying to be cutthroat and trying to actually literally take somebody's gig. I mean, that's just not a cool thing to do. But right. if Eric, you say, I want you to come here and sub for me and play the hell out of this show and kill it, it's basically the kind of the same sentiment that I'm just trying to convey when I say I want you to take this gig from me.
No, I totally understood that, and that was my thing. I was, trying to copy everything that you did, every drum fill, which, by the way, there was one particular one that used to kick my ass all the thing I could think it was like,
oh yeah.
Picking of it for some reason would always trip me up, and I'm like, damn, what is dude, I've practiced. I can't tell you how I would sit down on your kit before something, I'd have get there a little early to warm up. That would be the first thing I would do, just warming up, just to get my sticking together on that. Yeah.
That's funny. One thing that I remember you telling me, I think you said it multiple times, maybe even on the Zoom call that we had with Damon Mendez, subbing is like a 2.5 hour heart attack.
Yes. Thank you, George Farmer. That's exactly what he told me, bro.
That's what he came up with that phrase. He
came up with that, and the way he did it was just so cold, because I think it was my first night getting ready to sub on Broadway, and we're in the dressing room, and he's like, "Look, just relax, but it's basically going to be like a 2-hour heart attack."
And you're like, "What the?"
He told me relax. But it's gonna be like a 2-hour heart attack. I was like, "Thanks, George." With a straight face, like he didn't laugh, nothing, just walked away. I'm like,
and the way he said it too, like, yeah, it's going to be like a 2.5.
Exactly.
One thing about subbing, once you get the first show done, then you get asked to go back. Have you ever had a sophomore slump where you're like, I got this. I don't have to pay attention too much anymore. And you go in and you're like, oh man, you mess up that fill or you mess up something else. What was your second experience like? Or was it as good as the first?
Man, because I think you started me with like a week or something like that. And all of them, as I recall, they were all intense. It didn't feel easier until maybe 2 weeks in, something like that. Just all of it was was super intense for me, at least for a good 2 weeks. Then I began to settle in more after about 2 weeks. One thing that George Farmer said that really helped was, he said, look, one song at a time. One song at a time. Just look at the show that way. Try not to look at it like this, like all of this music. One song at a time. finish one song, boom. Okay, done. Next song, one song at a time. Look at it that way. And do not live in your mistakes. You make a mistake, you got to really, get your zen on. Keep moving. Keep moving. Do not live in the mistake. Start to, you know what I mean? You start to digress, and your playing begins to digress. You cannot do that. I mean, on any gig, but especially in, Broadway, or any kind of theater gig, whether it's off Broadway, you gotta, stay focused. Fine. You missed that, keep moving. You got a whole show going on here. Keep going.
That's great advice. So after Memphis, were you asked, or did you think about other shows, or did you get involved in any other kind of theater experience?
I did. There was Lady Day. That was very special to me. That was very big. With Audra McDonald. That's one show that just blew me away. On many levels. Anyone that knows about Audra McDonald, if you know, you know. If you don't, just go and look up that show and close your eyes, and you're listening to Billie Holiday. It's that, she's that amazing. Thanks to you again for bringing me in to sub on that one. That was just a super dope experience.
Have you ever had those situations where you're on stage and somebody like that you idolize? Say, for instance, Larry Blackman came and saw you play. Would you be like, "Oh shit, it's Larry Blackman"? For those that don't know Larry Blackman, he was the drummer for a legendary funk soul semi-rock band called Cameo, and that Eric Brown and I know very well his style of playing and his drumming. Say, for instance, somebody like him comes to a show. Would you start changing things, or were you just like, this is me? You came to see the show. Like, how have you reacted when you saw people that you idolize at your shows?
Great question. I used to, get a little frazzled. I used to, but not anymore. At a certain point, and I mean, I've had to grow to that point. Basically that inner conversation that you just mentioned. You have to be confident in your own playing, and if whoever is in the room to check out the show, to check you out, they're there to see you do your thing. And yeah, of course, they're musicians. They're going to judge you. Of course. That's what we do. Even if we say that we're not, of course.
we're talk about judging people. When you go see shows, do you revert back to your sister with the folded arms and looking at the box top band?
I try to enjoy whatever I'm checking out, and that's it. I mean, but yes, in my mind, I'm like, ooh, nice. I'll give it up. Great choices. He's killing. If it's not, I'm like, oh, okay. I probably wouldn't have done that, but okay. But yeah, man, to answer your question, I mean, that's just a thing of confidence and being sure about your own ability, and just going into, any gig and doing what you do. And again, that, everyone has their own journey of getting to that point. Some get there sooner than others, but yeah, I mean, at one point, man, it used to shake me up a bit. I'll tell you, back in the Bay Area, I don't know if you heard of Walter Hawkins and the Hawkins family. That's like, gospel royalty. And one of my quote unquote idols was Joel Smith, who played on all those recordings, bass and drums. And he was also an accessible cat in the Bay Area. You'd see him around, you know, you could call him up and chop it up with him. Very humble, very, very cool guy. Rest in peace. But man, if sometimes he would pop up to your gig, to a local gig, and I'd be like, oh my God. But he was so cool, you know, he was so cool. Sometimes he would sit in and play. There were times he would even, you know, talk to me afterwards and just, you know, wouldn't even be about music. It would just be about whatever, you know, which would, you know, make me a little more relaxed. And, you know, if it were a local club gig, so on that next set, I'd go back and, you know, and just play, man. And he'd stay there and chill. Wouldn't even, you know, bother with sitting in, just stay and hang. But moving forward to Lady Day, the funny thing about that, I remember you telling me this, Carrington, when she came in, when she came to the gig, and all the different celebrities who would just pop up at that show. So whenever I would sub, I would purposely not wear my glasses, and I made it a point not to look into the audience because I didn't want to trip, because I knew there would be some heavy cats coming through there checking out the show. And sure enough, one day when I subbed, I think it's Delfeo Marcellus.
Oh yeah, really?
Yeah, he showed up. He came backstage and was like, "Hey man, nice playing." Delfeo. I was like, great. I was like, exactly. This is exactly why I don't wear my glasses to this gig and look out into the audience. But yeah, man, I would do the same thing. You know, I would come to that gig and just play it, just try and play the music to the best of my ability and make it feel good, make it feel organic. And you know, the only way to really do that is just, you know, rely on your own skills, not trip off who's there, who's not, and trying to impress anyone. Just give your best, play for the music, you know, play the show, and, you know, and bring your own personality and your own vibe. That's why you're there in the first place. You would have never gotten the call if you know, you didn't have, you know, what it takes to bring what's needed to that show.
And that's why I said when I got my third Broadway show, Ain't Too Proud, it was February of 2019 when we started. I was like, you know what, Eric, you need to get on this now. And from Memphis to Lady Day to Ain't Too Proud, I was like, who am I? Oh, Eric, you've always been there for me, and I know you do a great job. I love the way you play. I know that you're going to be prepared, and you worked with Kenny Seymour before. And I said, as soon as we started, I gave you the book. I think I gave you the music too. And I don't know what I did, but I did what we usually do. And I got you in there when we first started rehearsing. And you were there like when we were kind of still creating the show for the Broadway run. Yeah. And you were the first sub, from what I remember, to get in there and sub for me there too. Did you have the same kind of process that you took on for the other shows for Ain't Too Proud as well?
Yeah, pretty much. Even though I knew the music and grew up on the music, you know, there's the Broadway version. There's the Kenny Seymour version. You know what I mean? There's so many, you know, different components, you know. What I like to tell cats a lot of times, especially during that time, because I had a lot of guys asking me about the show, and I would tell them, you know, yeah, it's pretty much, you know, they play the songs like the record, but it's not like you just come in like you're doing a you know, wedding gig or a cover gig. There are specific arrangements, you know. Then there's when there's dialogue, you know, the music changes, you know, there's so many different components. So you have to learn the Broadway way of playing and the theater way of playing, which brings to mind a very small detail, but it makes a big difference, that I started doing a lot once I started subbing for you. And that's playing playing the rim shot and not playing the snare, full out rim shots, and then, getting another sound without playing the rim shot makes a big difference.
So the Broadway version of Ain't Too Proud or Get Ready, how is it different from what you do on a club date?
Well, it's very specific. The songs are arranged, as always, with Broadway. There's just, a lot of different hits and nuances that all matter. all notes matter. In theater, there are no wasted notes. I mean, in general, as a player, I don't think one should waste any notes anyway. But trust me, in theater, there are no wasted notes. Everything that you play or don't play, it matters, and you will get called on it. I have many times, even during a show.
So when you play notes that aren't in the show, or make a mistake and you get notes from a conductor, how do you take that? Do you take it personally? You're like, I didn't mess up, or what? Like, what's your approach to taking notes?
Oh man,
getting notes. I mean,
yeah. Well, number one, for me, I've learned now that. And I always say this to myself after subbing out, and Kenny Seymour was always, except for Lady Day, was the conductor. So my motto was, no news is good news. If he didn't have anything, or whoever the conductor is, didn't have anything to say to me after the show, and was just like, good job, see you whenever, or good night. That to me was praiseworthy. I'm like, thank you, God. But on the other hand, when there's notes, I'm open to it. I mean, because the goal is, if they're giving you notes, they want you to improve, and they do want you back. If you didn't do well and there are no notes, that's like you're done. You know what I mean? Because they don't really want to have you back. Why give you any notes? Yeah, I have notes and I don't like them. So, but to answer your question, man, no, I've always been open to improvement in theater and getting notes after a show, because I take them to heart. No, I don't take them personal, although it is personal, because we put our hearts and soul into this and to what we do. So you take those notes, you take that energy, and make something good. You go back and you improve, and you come back and you kill it. Because that's what they want. It may seem harsh, it might hurt or whatever, but the goal is for you to get it right. If a conductor is giving you notes, hey, I need you to do this. And fortunately, conductors I've worked with have always been, very cool. They've been very, very warm. So when giving notes, a lot of times they're like, look, boom, 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 XYZ. I need you to do this. Remember, at this point, at bar, whatever, make sure we get this, and but great job, but get it right.
You recently had your own show off Broadway, Smokey Joe's Cafe.
Yes.
Tell me how you get that, how you got that, and what that experience was like.
John Miller, contractor, reached out to me for that job. And it originally ran, I think, like a month or two in Maine before coming to Broadway. The cool thing about that is I was able to, in the workshop, I was able to basically create that book. So it was pretty much whatever I played, how I was feeling the music, is what the book ended up becoming. So, by the time we were in production and running the show in Maine, I mean, it was just me. I was just playing what I knew. I basically created the show, as far as the drum book, that is. So
when people hear that you created the book, do you have to write out the music, or because people don't really understand how this all works? John Miller calls you and says, "Hey, I got this show called Smokey Joe's Cafe. It's going to Maine. Are you interested?" And you're like, "Sure." Then what happens? You go to Maine and you're doing what?
Right. So basically we had, if I remember right, maybe a couple of weeks of rehearsal before going to Maine. And then we had more rehearsal, of course, once we were in Maine. So workshopping is basically, going through every nuance of the show. The dancers and actors are working out dance routines, and music is being created around those routines. There are changes being made right there in real time. And there's someone to, basically write out my drum part. So everything that I'm playing, there's a guy sitting there basically, writing it out. And I'm sorry, what was the other?
So you're
there for that?
Yeah, and well, you're in Maine. You're going through the music, the choreography, the songs, and you put on performances of the show in Maine. Like, what happens when you were up there?
So in Maine, there's we were in Algonquin, Maine. Believe I can't remember the name of the theater, but it's basically like a musical theater where they put on productions, and it ran, like I said, for about a month, 8 shows a week, and we all stayed there. And the show was pretty successful there. Actually, most of the shows were sold out. And living in Maine for that time was great. Great lobster, of course. But it was the same thing, man. We had maybe 2 or 3 weeks of rehearsals, and really getting things tight and together. And once it started to run, we were in it. Once it came to off Broadway, I think the 42nd Street Theater, we did the same thing. We had a few weeks of rehearsals. There were some changes made to the music and the whole production to just tighten it up. And was same thing. We started again. We had opening night, and I think it ran. I'm not sure how long it ran. Maybe a year, maybe something like that. Not that long, but but it was good.
Being a chair holder as opposed to someone coming in to sub. Well, first of all, I kind of know what it's like having the chair holder. You don't have to worry as much, and you're not subbing, and the heart attack factor is much lower. Even though you still have to perform at the same level every night. Did you feel that you were much more relaxed, and how did you wind up keeping the show at a high level after doing the same thing over and over again for almost a year, or the whole length of the show? Like, what did you do to maintain the high quality that you expect of yourself and of the show?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, by the time, I mean, we were, in production. I mean, the band was amazing, and we had all, lived with this music for a few months, so it was just a part of us. So we were a real band by that time. By the time it, hit Broadway, I mean, we were all relaxed and just having fun, really, and just you know, playing the show as if, we were on tour. I mean, it was just like second nature by that time. So it was night and day. There was no heart attack factor. It was just, it was really just fun every night, to be honest, because the show was just in us at that point. So we could, really, um, tweak the dynamics, we all had a really good command of the show. And like I said, I mean, we were a band. So, and it felt like that.
Were there a lot of people reaching out to you to sub?
Not a lot, but it was pretty amazing, to be on that end of it, looking for subs, you being one of them. I believe Abe Fogel reached out to me, which blew my mind. um, um, There was let me see, Joshua Priest, who actually did a killer job, and yeah, that was about it. I reached out to a few other cats who I thought would have done well, but yeah, it was definitely it felt strange being on on that end, looking for subs, but it was cool.
Subbing on shows. What are some things that you should never do as a sub on a Broadway show?
Number one, don't get too comfortable. And by that, and this is me. This is what the approach I like to take. I mean, cats can do what they want, but I say, number one, don't get too comfortable. And by that, I mean, keep in mind, just your overall attitude, how you deal with people, you know, kind of treat it like almost, like a corporate job. When you come in, you meet people, you know what I'm saying? Put on your good guy, good female, you know, um, attitude. You're working with a lot of different people, come from different walks of life, different personalities. Just keep that in mind. Even if you do a great job, that's cool. Just remember, your sub, just keep it cool. That's one of the main things. I would also say, there's no, unless the show is open for improvisation, don't improvise. Ever play the show. That's Broadway. It's you might know the song. Say, for example, ain't too proud. I mean, sure, you may have heard it all your life, but this show has a specific arrangement of the song and how it is to be played. Play it that way. That's it. There's no discussion about it. Well, I think no, don't. Just play the show. Yeah, that's the main thing, man. That's the main thing I would say as far as don'ts. And don't be late. Don't be late. Ever. Don't be that guy. Unless it's somebody's or girl. Or somebody's dying. You better be in a car accident or something. But trying that, things happen, of course. But yeah, these are common sense things, I think. But yeah, just,
Didn't you also do the Bob Marley thing?
Yeah. Oh yes. Marley in Baltimore, man. That was a great experience. What, 2016 maybe? That was just a really beautiful. That whole experience was really beautiful. A lot of those people have gone on to do some really amazing things. But yeah, that was another one where um, I didn't really. It was more about the feel, um, as far as the approach to the music with that than it was about reading. So I had to really dig into that whole Bob Marley world and really get the right vibe and the feel for playing reggae. Um, and it is very specific. It's not. I didn't take the attitude, oh, this is just anything. I mean, it's a vibe. It's a certain energy and spirit that's that comes with playing that music and making it sound authentic. And you can believe there were plenty of Jamaicans there making sure that we that we were getting it right. And all those shows were sold out, by the way, man. That was a really good experience. I think we did it right. It's so interesting and beautiful playing that music because a lot of times the way to I would think of the drum fills in reggae as I would call them kind of incomplete statements,
Hmm.
in between the verses. It's almost like you're singing or responding to uh to the singer, to Bob Marley. I mean, actually that is exactly what Carlton was doing. I mean, it was like almost like a duet. That's how it sounded to me between him and Bob, the way he played off of his vocal. It wasn't programmed. There wasn't like a set thing that he always did at a certain point. It was just however Bob flowed, he reacted, but it was very subtle, but it was so funky. Like you said, that one drop was so accurate. You didn't hear a flam with that side stick and the kick. It was one. That they call it a one drop for a reason.
Are you working on new music right now? Are you working on anything else?
As a matter of fact, I am. Like a lot of artists and musicians during the shutdown in 2020, I did some writing and was able to take advantage of a lot of artists not touring and being at home. So I was able to do, the remote recording and collaborate with a lot of different cats. And I was able to work with this particular artist who I am a big fan of, harpist Brandy Younger out of Brooklyn. I just completed a single with her that I intend to release like first quarter of 23. And I'm super excited about that one, man. Really, really excited about it. It's a beautiful tune. It's called RSPS, which stands for Rich Slave, Poor Slave. And features Brandy Younger. And yeah, that's my next baby that I'm trying to look into birth really soon.
Yes, looking forward to it. You're also doing some shows with Keisha Benjamin. Is that her name?
Yeah, Lakeisha Benjamin.
Lakeisha Benjamin.
Yeah, we did a great festival, man, over the summer where we opened for George Clinton and P-Funk.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was amazing. I mean, he actually gave us props, afterwards, man. It was such a cool experience. He was a very approachable cat, believe it or not. He was very, very responsive. He was very cool and supportive, and he really liked our show. And of course, we went crazy when they went on for the next 3 hours. They performed.
And you got a chance to meet him. I saw it on your Instagram. You were talking to him for a minute. What did you ask him?
Man, it was funny because, I didn't want to be that guy bothering him, right before they were going to hit the stage. But I did want to be that guy. So I was just trying to wait for my moment, you know. We were backstage, and I think it was Greg Boyer, trombonist, and I said, "Man, I'd like to get a picture with George." And Greg was like, "Man, he's cool. He's mad cool. Just just go over there. He's cool." So I caught him while he was coming out of his tent, and he was just kind of roaming around. He had some time before he hit the stage, and I just walked over to him and I said, "Hey, man." I said, "You mind if I get a picture with you?" I was just playing drums with Lakeisha. And when I told him, he was like, "Oh, man, you were playing drums, man." Man, it was like talking to my uncle, like my funk uncle, dude. I kid you not.
Uncle.
No, I kid you not. We sat down, and one of the guys who was working with Lakeisha and the hospitality crew grabbed my camera, and he was like, "No, I got you. So he just started taking all these pictures while I sat down with George. So I didn't say anything. And once I told him I was playing drums, he just went on. He was like, "Man, you guys play some slick shit. First it was funky. Then you got slick and started playing something different. And then you got funky again." Dude, I was just like a kid. I was so giddy. I didn't have any questions. I was just, if you look at the pictures, you can see I was just like, I was just listening to him and just laughing and enjoying the moment. That's all. So that's why all those pictures look like that. I'm just laughing and he's just on talking and talking. I'm just like.
If you had a chance to sit down with him and just ask him once you had one question to ask George, what would you ask him? I'm just curious.
Wow. The one question I would ask, I would ask him his advice on longevity. What would he tell me? Someone who loves funk, was raised on funk. What are some things that you would say you have to do for longevity?
What would you recommend to someone that's young, that's coming into New York? You've been in New York for many decades. What advice would you give them as far as a long-term career as a musician in New York City?
Know your purpose. Know what it is that you want to do, or at least have an idea, and also be open. Always be a student. I think most of us, or most cats that are successful doing this, no matter what they achieve or how far they go, they're always students. That's the vibe I get from a lot of people who've been doing this forever, and even icons. They're always students. They're always learning. I mean, look at Herbie. Of course, he's I consider him a master teacher, but someone like that is still a student. They're still learning. They're still working with younger cats. They still know about the up and coming, the newbies, who are coming onto the scene. So, that's an attitude of being a student and being open. So, and put your big boy pants on, because because it's real. Whether you're, it's real in this music world, and being able to make it, whether you're in New York, Nashville, but any of the major cities where, music is really happening. Be a student, man, and stay focused, stay the course, kill the distractions, on a daily. Try and kill those distractions, man, and stay focused. And if it's really real, the gift is really there, you're a talented cat, things will happen. They will happen.
Somebody hears this and they want to know more about you. Where can they find you on the internets?
On these internet streets? Website is ericbrowndrums.com. And my Instagram is Eric Brown Drummer. Facebook, I'm on Facebook. It's the same photo. On Twitter. My music is on all the streaming platforms. You can just pull up Eric Brown. If you type in You Matter, you'll get my whole profile, whether it's Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, wherever. And feel free to, reach out, holla at me.
Top 5 drummers of all time.
Ooh, nice one. Okay. Since I just saw a post from another musician friend of mine, one of my biggest, or I'm a big fan of, Steve Jordan, Will Kennedy, Vinny Calhuda, Elvin, and Tony Williams.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you hear about Will Kennedy through that first Yellow Jackets album that he was on, Four Corners? Or was it something else?
I learned that he's, another Bay Area native. So it's another Bay Area hero. That was a pretty dope experience because I was heavy and still a big fan of Ricky Lawson, drummer prior to Will. So when that album dropped, my ears made the adjustment, and it was like, whoa, okay. Then seeing him live was just like, wow. It was like the first time experiencing a drummer making me emotional. Like the way he played was just so expressive and sensitive to the music. It just gave me a whole new thing, a way of looking at the drums and how to approach them.
Thank you for taking some time out of your day to talk.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Eric Brown. And definitely check out You Matter, Eric Brown. Check out his website. Check out what he's doing. Amazing drummer, great person, and one of the best hat-wearing persons you will ever see walk the face of the earth. But again, thanks, man. And I hopefully will see you soon. Next time you're playing somewhere, I'm definitely going to come check you out.
Thank you, brother. Blessings. All right. To you. Talk soon.
Talk to you soon, man. Thanks.
To continue producing the high-quality podcast you're listening to, publishing engaging newsletter content, and posting YouTube videos, we would appreciate any financial contributions you can make. At this time, we have no advertisers, and we'd like to keep it that way. Our staff is small but growing. We can only produce a show with listener contributions from people like you. There are a couple of ways you can do that. You can sign up to be a monthly or annual subscriber at BroadwayDrumming101.com. You can also contribute any amount you wish through PayPal at paypal.me/BroadwayDrumming101 or through Venmo at BroadwayDrumming101. Or help keep us caffeinated by buying us a cup of coffee or a week's worth at buymeacoffee.com/BD101. That's buymeacoffee.com/BD101. We appreciate any support you can give. Don't forget to subscribe to the Broadway Drumming 101 YouTube page. You'll find more content that isn't featured on the podcast or on the Broadway Drumming 101 Instagram page. Make sure when you subscribe to the YouTube page, you click on the button to be notified when a new video is published. Be sure to visit our new shop at merchandise.broadwaydrumming101.com. Thanks again for listening to the Broadway Drumming 101 podcast.